All right, strap yourselves in because we are hitting the road with Robert Pirsig's Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. And, we're not just like skimming the surface here.
Oh, no, not at all.
We are going deep, deep into chapters 10 through 20.
That's where the real journey begins.
Exactly. And believe me, these chapters are where things get really, really interesting.
It's amazing how Pirsig, he takes us beyond the nuts and bolts of motorcycles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he uses it. It's like the springboard, right?
Yeah, it's like he's using the motorcycle as a way to explore, like, the whole foundation of Western thought.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It forces you to examine, like, how we think,
Yeah.
how we learn, and what it even means to, search for this quality.
Especially in a world that's so obsessed with just, like, the how-tos, right?
Right. It's all about the how and not the why.
Yeah, and it's like he's taken apart, it's like he's taken the engine of our minds, laid out all the pieces, and it's like, okay, figure it out.
Yeah, and one of the first things that you notice, like right off the bat, is this character, Phaedrus.
Yeah.
He is brilliant. He is troubled, and he is on this relentless quest to understand this thing he calls quality.
But here's the catch, and this is what I love about it, is he refuses to actually define it.
Right. And that's not just some random detail. I mean, that's like key to understanding Pirsig's whole approach.
Yeah.
He wants us to experience quality directly, not just get bogged down in words.
Don't overthink it, just feel it, right?
Exactly. It's like, how do you describe the taste of chocolate? I mean, you can try, but until you've actually tasted it, you just don't know.
It's like, I was thinking about those times, where you get so caught up in learning the rules of something or like the steps to something, you totally miss the point, right? You're so focused on getting it right.
Exactly.
You forget to actually enjoy it.
It's that overemphasis on technique.
Yeah.
And Pirsig, he gives this fantastic example, right, of a student whose writing just like explodes with life.
Once you take away the grades, right?
Yeah. Once the grades are gone, the pressure to perform, the need to meet all these external standards, it just vanishes.
It's like it was stifling that creativity.
Exactly.
So we've got this idea of quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't define it. We're supposed to feel it. But then Pirsig, he throws another curveball at us, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, he does.
He dives into this whole debate between empiricism and a priori knowledge.
Like, whose motorcycle is it anyway?
Is it what we see and touch, or is there something more going on? It's really deep.
We have Hume, the empiricist, saying, look, everything we know, it comes through our senses, right?
Right.
You touch the handlebars.
Yeah.
You feel the vibration of the engine.
The smell of the exhaust.
Exactly. But then Kant comes along, right? He says, hold on, there's something already in our minds that shapes how we see that motorcycle.
So it's not just like the raw information our senses are getting. There's some kind of like framework in our heads already.
A mental framework, yes.
Influencing how we see the world. So like, for example, I know my favorite coffee shop is on the corner, even if I haven't seen it today.
Right.
It's just there in my head. Is that kind of what Kant's getting at?
That's a great example. Think of it like having money in the bank. You don't have to constantly count it to know it's there.
Yeah.
That's a priori knowledge. It's there, regardless of your immediate experience.
Okay, so basically how we experience the world, even something as simple as a motorcycle, it's already being shaped by all this hidden knowledge we might not even be aware of.
Right, and that's heavy stuff to think about.
It is heavy, and it makes you wonder, like, how we approach learning, solving problems, all of it.
If we don't even know our own biases, how can we truly understand anything?
Right. This is why I love this book so much.
Yeah.
Every page is just, it's jam-packed with questions that make you rethink everything. But, before we get too lost in the weeds here, the philosophical weeds, let's bring it back to quality for a second.
Yeah, because even though Phaedrus won't give us a straight answer about what it is, he does give us glimpses of it in action.
Yeah, I mean, his teaching, for example, the whole no grades, no degrees thing, talk about a radical approach.
Totally. But the way his students respond is fascinating.
It's amazing how those who are genuinely interested in the subject matter, they just thrive.
They do. It suggests that maybe our traditional ways of measuring learning, they actually get in the way of real learning.
It's like those ridiculously complicated instruction manuals. Remember Dewey's, Phaedrus' colleague? He shows them those crazy rotisserie instructions.
Yeah, where they're so focused on being technically correct, they just suck all the joy out of it.
It's the classic versus romantic worldview clashing, isn't it?
Exactly. Like the classic mind loves the logic and the order, but the romantic mind, it just wants to be free.
So which one are you? Are you team classic or team romantic? Maybe we'll have to come a poll with our listeners.
Huh. I think we all have a bit of both in us, and that's the point, right? It's not about choosing sides.
It's about seeing beyond the categories.
Exactly. Finding a way to integrate both perspectives to see the bigger picture. And this is where it gets really interesting. Phaedrus starts to explore Eastern philosophy.
Yeah, this is where he throws out the Sanskrit phrase, tvam asi, which, if I'm remembering correctly, means thou art that.
Yes.
I got to be honest, Eastern philosophy is not my forte.
Sure.
Could you break that down for me? What's the meaning of that phrase, and how does it connect with everything else we've been discussing?
Okay, so thou art that. It's a very simple phrase, but it has deep meaning.
It does.
It's at the heart of Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, and it points to this idea that everything is connected. Like there's no real separation between you, the observer, and the thing you are observing. It completely goes against the Western way of thinking about the self and the world.
Whoa, okay, so it's not me over here looking at a motorcycle over there. It's more like one big experience.
Exactly.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and that's exactly what Phaedrus finds so liberating about Eastern philosophy. It provides a way out of that trap of constantly analyzing everything to death, that knife mentality that he talks about.
Oh, hold on a second. Back up for a minute. You mentioned this knife metaphor earlier.
I did.
What exactly does Pirsig mean by that?
He uses the image of a knife to represent the way we, dissect everything with our minds.
Our analytical brains, yeah.
We categorize, we analyze, it's how we make sense of the world, but it can also be a problem because it creates divisions where there might not be any.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this connects with tvam asi. If everything is connected, then the knife is actually creating false separations.
Got it.
It's imposing boundaries where none really exist.
And Pirsig argues that this is a big part of why we have trouble truly grasping quality. It's like, trying to understand a symphony by analyzing every single note.
You missed the whole point.
You might get the technical stuff, but you miss the beauty, the feeling, the impact of the whole thing.
It's like when you try to explain why you love a particular song. You can point to the lyrics, the melody, but there's something more there, right? Something you can't quite put your finger on.
There is.
Is that what we're talking about with quality?
Exactly. It's that intangible essence. It can't be captured in words. And, Pirsig, he actually critiques the whole field of aesthetics for trying to do just that.
Trying to pin it down? Yeah.
Trying to dissect quality into little pieces when it's something you have to experience.
It transcends definition, right?
Yes, and he uses this great example of a church being converted into a bar. The building is the same, right? But the feeling, the meaning, the quality, it's totally different.
Yeah, I love that example. It really shows how quality isn't bound by the form or function of something.
It goes deeper than that. It's something that resonates on a much deeper level. Yeah. And that's why Phaedrus's teaching methods are so unconventional. He doesn't lecture about abstract ideas. He has his students experience quality through their writing. Remember that assignment where he tells the student to describe the front of the opera house in Bozeman, brick by brick?
Yeah, that one always seemed a little strange to me, but now I'm starting to see what he was getting at.
It seems mundane, but it's actually brilliant. By forcing her to slow down, really observe, he's helping her tap into a deeper level of understanding, a sense of quality that you just can't teach through memorization.
And it works. Her writing is just so vivid and powerful after that.
Right. It's like she's seeing the world in a whole new way.
She is. And, it makes me think about how often we just rush through life and we don't really stop to appreciate the details.
And that's what Pirsig's trying to get us to do, to be present, to be mindful. Whether we're working, talking, or just taking a walk, everything becomes more meaningful when we engage with it fully.
That's a really powerful insight. It's so easy to get caught up in our own heads, to-do lists, all the distractions that we forget to just experience the moment.
And I think that's a huge part of what Pirsig is challenging us to do, to wake up, to become more aware of the quality that's all around us. It's there if we just open ourselves up to it. But it's not always easy, especially when we're dealing with this ghost that Phaedrus is always struggling with.
Oh, right, the ghost. We talked about it earlier, but I'm still a little fuzzy on what exactly he means by that. It's not like a real ghost, right? But what is this ghost that's haunting Phaedrus?
No, not a literal ghost. It's more like it's a metaphor for what Pirsig calls the ghost of rationality.
Okay.
It's that set of assumptions and beliefs that are at the core of Western thought.
Okay.
This drive to analyze everything, categorize everything, control everything. And he sees it as this kind of like insidious force that's leading us towards this place where things just don't make sense.
Meaninglessness.
Yes. It traps us in this endless cycle of achieving and striving, but we never stop to ask, like, why?
Why are we even doing all of this?
Exactly.
We're so focused on the how that we forget about the why.
And that's exactly the trap that Phaedrus is desperately trying to escape. He wants to find that deeper meaning, that purpose that lies beyond the grasp of the analytical mind. And it's a search that, it really takes him to the edge.
Yeah, and this is where the book gets really intense, right? Because we know Phaedrus eventually has a mental breakdown. Is that directly connected to his struggle with this ghost of rationality?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's definitely a contributing factor. Pirsig himself went through something similar, and it feels like he's exploring the darker side of this pursuit of quality through Phaedrus.
So what can we learn from his struggle? I'm all for questioning things and expanding my awareness, but I'm not trying to have a breakdown in the process.
That's understandable, and I think that's where the idea of balance comes in. It's not about completely rejecting rationality or logic, but it's about finding a way to combine those things with intuition, with emotion, with experience. It's about understanding the limitations of that analytical knife without throwing it away completely.
So it's about finding that middle ground, that sweet spot between the classic and the romantic, the analytical and the intuitive, the Western and the Eastern.
Exactly. It's about embracing the complexity of life, acknowledging that there's no easy answers, no one-size-fits-all solutions, and remembering that the journey itself, the process of questioning and seeking, is just as important as any destination.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to see how these really abstract philosophical ideas actually have very real implications for how we live our lives. But to be honest, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Where do we even start to apply all of this? How do we take these ideas out of the realm of philosophy and into our everyday lives?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll definitely explore more deeply in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at some practical takeaways from Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance, and specific actions we can all take to cultivate that sense of quality in our own lives. So stay tuned. It really does. It goes against that whole Western idea that there is a me and a not me.
Yeah.
And Phaedrus, he finds that so liberating about Eastern thought. It gives you a way to stop overanalyzing everything. It challenges that whole knife metaphor he talks about.
Hold on, let's go back to that for a second. You mentioned the knife before. What exactly does Pirsig mean by that?
Oh, he uses the image of a knife to represent, like, our analytical mind, the way we try to dissect and categorize everything. It helps us make sense of the world, but it can also create these artificial boundaries.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see how that ties back to tvam. If everything is interconnected, then using the knife is basically creating separation where there isn't any.
Yeah, right. Like you're imposing these boundaries that don't really exist. And Pirsig, he argues that this is a big reason why we struggle to understand quality. It's like, trying to understand a symphony by just focusing on individual notes.
You miss the big picture.
You might get the technical structure, but you miss the beauty, the emotion, the impact of the whole piece.
It's like when you try to explain why you love a song. You can talk about the melody, the lyrics, but there's something more there, something you can't really put into words.
Right, and that's exactly what we're talking about with quality.
Yeah, it can't really be defined.
It's that intangible essence that you can't capture with words or formulas. And you know what? Pirsig even calls out the whole field of aesthetics for trying to do just that.
Trying to put it in a box.
Trying to dissect it when it's something that can only be experienced. He uses that great example of the church that's turned into a bar.
Yeah.
The structure is the same, but the feeling, the meaning, the quality, it's completely different.
I love that example because it shows how quality isn't really about the physical form or the function of something.
Exactly. It's about something much deeper, something that resonates within us. And that's why Phaedrus's teaching methods are so different. He's not lecturing about theories. He's getting his students to experience quality directly through their work. Like, remember that assignment he gives where the student has to describe the front of the opera house in Bozeman?
Brick by brick.
Brick by brick.
Yeah. That one always struck me as a little odd. But now I'm starting to understand why he did that.
It seems so simple, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually brilliant. He's making her slow down, observe every detail, and it helps her tap into this deeper level of understanding, that sense of quality that you just can't learn from memorizing facts.
And it's amazing how her writing changes after that.
it becomes so much more vivid and powerful.
Yeah, like she's seeing the world with new eyes.
Exactly. And that's the power of being present, of being mindful. And it's something we can all do, whether we're working, talking, walking, anything. Everything becomes richer when we really pay attention.
It's so easy to get caught up in our thoughts or to-do lists, all the noise of the world, that we forget to really experience the moment.
And I think that's exactly what Prusik wants us to do, to wake up, to be more conscious of the quality that's all around us.
It's there if we look for it.
It is. We just have to open ourselves up to it.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy, especially when we're battling that ghost that Phaedrus is always wrestling with.
Oh, right, the ghost. We talked about it earlier, but I'm still not quite sure I get it. You said it's not an actual ghost, right?
Not a literal ghost.
So what is it? What is this ghost that's haunting Phaedrus?
Well, he calls it the ghost of rationality.
Yeah.
It's like, those assumptions and beliefs that are at the root of Western thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
It's that urge to analyze everything, categorize everything, control everything. And Pinsig sees it as kind of like this dangerous force that can lead us down a path where things just stop making sense.
Towards meaninglessness.
Exactly. And it traps us in this cycle where we're always striving, achieving, but we never stop to ask, why are we even doing this?
We're so busy with the how that we forget about the why.
Exactly. And that's the trap that Phaedrus is trying so hard to escape. He's searching for that deeper meaning, that sense of purpose that goes beyond just thinking and analyzing. And, it's a search that really pushes him to his limits.
It does. And this is where things get really intense, right?
Right.
We know that Phaedrus ends up having a mental breakdown. Do you think that's directly related to this struggle with the ghost of rationality?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's definitely part of it. Pirsig himself went through something similar, and it feels like he's using Phaedrus to explore that dark side of the search for quality.
The dangers of going too far.
Exactly. So what can we learn from that? From Phaedrus's struggle? I mean, it's great to question things and expand your horizons, but nobody wants to end up having a breakdown, right?
Okay, that's for sure.
I think that's where the idea of balance is so important. It's not about rejecting logic or rationality altogether, but it's about finding a way to integrate those things with intuition, with emotion, with experience. It's about recognizing the limitations of that analytical knife without throwing it away completely.
So it's about finding that middle path, that balance point between the classic and the romantic, the analytical and the intuitive, the Eastern and the Western.
Yes. It's about embracing the complexity of life and understanding that there's not always a right answer. There's no easy solution. And recognizing that the journey itself, the act of questioning and searching, is just as important as wherever you end up.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. I'm really starting to see how these philosophical ideas connect to how we live our lives. But if I'm being honest, I'm still a bit overwhelmed. Where do we even begin to put all of this into practice? How do we take these ideas out of the realm of philosophy and bring them into our daily lives?
That's a great question, and it's exactly what we'll dive into in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to look at some specific things we can all do, some actionable steps to cultivate that sense of quality in our everyday lives. So stick with us.
Welcome back. So, we've talked about a lot of heady stuff like quality and the ghost of rationality and,
We have.
But now I'm really curious about the practical side of things.
Yeah.
How can we actually apply these ideas? It's all well and good to talk about tvam and the limits of, overanalyzing everything.
Right.
But what does that actually look like in real life?
Well, I think Pirsig does give us some clues throughout the book. And one of the things that really stands out for me is how he challenges the way we think about learning. Phaedrus and that whole teaching experiment he did, emphasizing the joy of discovery,
Yeah.
It's a really refreshing alternative to these, rigid systems that focus just on outcomes,
It makes you wonder if we get so caught up in grades and all the external stuff that we forget how to just, enjoy learning for the sake of learning.
Totally. And that connects to another really important point. Cultivating peace of mind.
Okay.
Whether you're at work trying to solve a problem or just, dealing with everyday stress, that sense of calm, that clarity can make all the difference.
You know what? That reminds me of that rotisserie example. If you're all frazzled, you're going to miss those key details and end up with a pile of junk.
Exactly. But if you can bring a sense of peace to that task, the solution becomes so much clearer.
So how do we find that peace of mind? Is it something we're born with, or can we actually learn it?
I think it's probably a bit of both, to be honest.
Hi.
Some folks are naturally more calm, but you can definitely cultivate it through practice.
Yeah.
Things like mindfulness, meditation, or even just being out in nature. Those things can help you quiet all that mental noise and connect with a deeper sense of peace within.
It's like, giving yourself permission to just be, disconnect from all the craziness and reconnect with yourself. And, maybe that's part of what it means to experience quality. Just being fully present, no judgment, no distractions.
I think you're right, because remember, quality isn't something we can define or measure.
Right.
It's something you feel, you experience, you just know it when you see it. And so often, those moments of quality, they happen when we're really present, really in tune with ourselves and what's around us.
So it's not about like achieving things or chasing some external measure of success. It's about finding that sense of like rightness and harmony within ourselves.
Exactly. And that brings us back to tvam. It's about realizing that everything's connected. We're all part of something much bigger than ourselves. Even in our everyday tasks, there's a chance to connect with something truly meaningful.
This has been a really incredible deep dive into Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. And it's left me feeling both challenged, but also hopeful. It's like this book, it's not just a philosophy book, it's a call to action. It's like Pirsig is inviting us to live more consciously, to live more authentically, and to be more in tune with the quality that's all around us.
And for everyone listening, I encourage you to pick up this book or maybe revisit it, wrestle with the ideas, question your own assumptions, and most importantly, find your own path to quality. It's out there waiting for you to discover it. Thanks for joining us.